My mother and older sister skipped my husband's memorial service, calling it a gloomy little gathering not worth ruining a cruise over, while they sailed to the Bahamas for my sister's vow renewal. 3 days later, they used the old garage code, walked into my kitchen, and demanded that I sign over the life insurance check to save my sister's boutique. Their smiles vanished when I opened the envelope my husband had left with his attorney and showed them whose signature they had already forged. Before I go any further, family, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to love people from a distance just to keep your own peace, you already understand the kind of silence I'm about to describe. My name is Erin Caldwell. I'm 33 years old, and until last month, I thought grief would be the heaviest thing I would ever carry. I was wrong. Grief was heavy, yes. It sat on my chest in the mornings before I opened my eyes. It followed me down the hallway when I passed the laundry room and saw Daniel's work shirt still hanging from the rack. It waited for me at the kitchen table, where his coffee mug sat untouched beside a folded newspaper he never got to finish. It lived in the passenger seat of my car, in the half-empty bottle of his cologne on the bathroom counter, in the quiet hum of the porch light he used to fix every time it flickered. But grief was honest. What came after was worse. Daniel died on a rainy Thursday evening outside Nashville, Tennessee, 5 weeks after our third wedding anniversary. He was driving home from the children's hospital where he worked as a pediatric respiratory therapist. A pickup truck hydroplaned through a red light and hit the driver's side of his car. The police officer who came to my door kept saying, "I'm sorry, ma'am," like if he said it enough times, it might become less impossible. It didn't. Daniel was 37. He had the kind of laugh that made strangers smile in grocery store lines. He left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror when I had hard days at work. He remembered every nurse's birthday on his floor. He cried during old dog commercials and pretended he had allergies. He was my home. His memorial service was held on a Saturday morning at a small chapel near Franklin. I chose white lilies because Daniel hated red roses and said they looked like apology flowers. I wore the navy dress he bought me for our anniversary dinner. The funeral director placed a framed photograph of him beside the urn, one where he was leaning against our porch railing with the sunlight catching the side of his face. I kept looking at the chapel doors, waiting for my mother to walk in. I waited for my sister. I waited for anyone from my side of the family. No one came. Not my mother, Marlene. Not my older sister, Brianna. Not my brother-in-law, Todd. Not even a text from them during the service. At 11:42 that morning, while I was standing beside Daniel's urn trying not to collapse, Brianna posted a video from the deck of a cruise ship. She was wearing a white sundress, holding a mimosa, laughing into the wind while my mother stood beside her in oversized sunglasses. The caption said, "10 years married and still choosing joy. Some people expect the world to stop for their sadness, but we choose light." I saw it after the service, sitting alone in the back of the funeral home office while the director handed me Daniel's ashes in a velvet bag. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Don't start drama about us missing today." Brianna planned this cruise for months. Daniel wouldn't want everyone sitting around at a gloomy little gathering. "We'll talk when we're back." A gloomy little gathering. That was what my mother called the memorial of the man who had spent 2 years paying her electric bill every winter because she claimed her fixed income wasn't enough. A gloomy little gathering. That was how she described the room where Daniel's coworkers wept into tissues, where his favorite doctor spoke about the babies he had helped save, where I stood with his wedding ring on a chain around my neck because I wasn't ready to put it away. I didn't reply. For 3 days, I didn't call them. I didn't text. I didn't comment on the cruise photos, not the sunset dinner, not the champagne toast, not the matching shirts that said "still the main characters." I sat in my house and tried to remember how to breathe. On the 4th morning, I was in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing Daniel's old Vanderbilt hoodie, heating water for tea. I knew I wouldn't drink. The house still smelled faintly like the lilies from the memorial. Sympathy cards were stacked on the counter. A casserole from our neighbor sat untouched in the refrigerator. Daniel's keys were still in the blue ceramic bowl by the back door. At 9:17 the garage door opened. I froze. For 1 second, my heart did something foolish. It lifted. Daniel? Then I heard my mother's voice. I told you the code still worked. The door from the garage into the kitchen swung open, and my mother walked in like she owned the place. She wore white linen pants, a gold bracelet Daniel had helped me buy for her last Christmas, and a fresh tan from the Caribbean sun. Behind her came Brianna, dragging a rolling suitcase with designer tags still attached. Todd followed them, carrying a leather folder under one arm and a cup of iced coffee in the other. None of them looked at the sympathy cards. None of them looked at Daniel's keys. My mother wrinkled her nose and glanced around the kitchen. You really need to open some windows, Erin. This house feels like a mausoleum. Brianna sighed dramatically and dropped into one of my kitchen chairs. I'm exhausted. We got back at midnight, and then Todd had to drive straight here, because apparently everything has to become a crisis. I stared at them. My voice came out flat. Why are you in my house? Mother blinked as if I had insulted her. Your house? Sweetheart, don't start with that tone. We're family. Family knocks. Todd gave a little laugh, the kind men use when they want to pretend a woman is being emotional instead of accurate. Let's all stay calm. Brianna pushed her sunglasses up into her hair. We don't have time for your mood, Erin. My landlord is threatening to lock the boutique by Friday if I don't catch up the rent. I need $38,000. I thought I had heard her wrong. You need what? $38,000, she repeated, irritated. And before you make that face, it's temporary. Daniel had life insurance. Mom said the check came already. My hands were wrapped around the mug so tightly my knuckles hurt. My husband had been dead for 11 days. 11 days. And my sister, who skipped his memorial to drink cocktails on a ship, was sitting in my kitchen asking for the money attached to his death. I looked at my mother. You told her about the insurance? Mother waved her hand. Don't be dramatic. Everyone knows spouses have policies. Besides, you don't have children. You don't need that much money sitting around. Something inside me went very still. Brianna leaned forward. Exactly. I have employees, Erin. I have responsibilities. My boutique is my brand. If it closes, people will talk. You can sit here grieving as long as you want, but I have a life. I looked at the woman who had once cried in my driveway because she couldn't afford payroll. The woman Daniel had quietly helped 3 times without asking for recognition. I looked at my mother, who had skipped my husband's memorial and then walked through my garage code like grief was a locked door she had every right to open. No, I said. The word was soft. That made it worse for them. Brianna's mouth fell open. Excuse me? I said no. My mother stiffened. Erin Caldwell, you do not tell your family no when we are in trouble. You weren't my family on Saturday. The room went silent. Todd set his iced coffee on the counter and opened the leather folder. Maybe we should approach this more practically. He slid a document across my kitchen island. I didn't touch it. What is that? A temporary assignment agreement, he said smoothly. It authorizes Brianna to receive a portion of the insurance proceeds as a family emergency distribution. Nothing complicated. I stared at the signature line. My name had already been typed under it. Then I saw something that made my stomach turn cold. There was another page behind it. A copy of a notarized authorization form, supposedly giving my mother permission to act on my behalf in matters connected to Daniel's estate, and at the bottom was a signature. Mine. Except I had never signed it. I looked up slowly. Where did you get this? Mother's face flickered. Just once. Brianna rushed in. Don't make this ugly. Mom found some paperwork in your office when she came by last week to help. She came by last week? Mother lifted her chin. You wouldn't answer your phone. I was concerned. You came into my house while I was at the funeral home making arrangements? I used the garage code because you clearly weren't thinking straight. My mind moved backward through the week. The folder on Daniel's desk had been shifted. The drawer where I kept our documents had not closed properly. I had assumed I did it in a fog of grief. I hadn't. My mother had entered my home, gone through my papers, and taken copies. Todd tapped the folder. The point is, Erin, this is already in motion. Brianna spoke to the insurance company yesterday. They only need confirmation from you. If you refuse, we can argue that you're emotionally unstable and unable to manage the funds appropriately. I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just came out, small and sharp. Brianna narrowed her eyes. What is funny? You forged my signature, I said quietly. And you think I'm the unstable one? Mother slammed her palm on the island. I signed your name because you were ignoring us. You forced my hand. There it was. Not even denial. Just entitlement wrapped in outrage. You signed my name? I am your mother. You committed fraud. I protected this family, she snapped. Brianna is your sister. Her business matters. Daniel is gone, Erin. That money is not going to bring him back. For a second, the kitchen disappeared. All I could see was Daniel's face in that chapel photograph. All I could hear was my mother's text, a gloomy little gathering. I set the mug down carefully. Get out. Brianna stood so fast the chair scraped against the tile. You selfish little widow. You've always been like this, quiet and judgmental, acting like you're better than everyone because you married some hospital saint. My eyes moved to her. Say one more word about my husband. Todd stepped between us, raising both hands. Okay. Emotions are high. Let's not threaten anyone. I smiled at him. He didn't like that. You're right, I said. Let's be practical. I walked past them into the hallway. My mother called after me, asking where I thought I was going. I didn't answer. I went into Daniel's office. The room smelled like cedar and printer paper. His reading glasses were still beside the keyboard. His old Titan's cap hung from the lamp. On the shelf behind his desk was a row of binders he had labeled with his neat block handwriting because Daniel was the kind of man who kept receipts for everything, including light bulbs. I opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written across the front. Daniel had given it to me 6 months before he died after we updated our wills. I had teased him for being too organized. He kissed my forehead and said, If something ever happens to me, I don't want you fighting wolves while you're bleeding. I didn't open it then. I opened it that morning. Inside was a letter, a copy of our trust documents, a list of accounts, and a business card for his attorney, Rebecca Sloan. There was also a small yellow sticky note in Daniel's handwriting. Call Rebecca before you sign anything, especially if it involves your mother. My knees almost gave out. Even dead, my husband was still protecting me. I carried the envelope back to the kitchen. My mother was whispering harshly to Brianna. Todd was on his phone, probably pretending he had more legal authority than a man with a real estate license and a podcast about wealth mindset. I placed Daniel's envelope on the island beside their forged document. Mother looked at it. What is that? The reason you should have knocked. Brianna rolled her eyes. Erin, stop with the drama. I pulled out my phone and tapped Rebecca Sloan's contact from the card. She answered on the second ring. Erin? Rebecca, I said, putting her on speaker. My mother, my sister Brianna, and my brother-in-law Todd are in my kitchen with documents containing a forged signature. They say they've contacted the insurance company using a notarized authorization I never signed. The kitchen went silent. Rebecca's voice changed instantly. Do not let them leave with those papers. Are you safe? Mother's face went pale. Safe enough, I said. Todd reached for the folder. I put my hand on top of it. Rebecca continued. Erin, Daniel filed copies of your notarized signatures with my office and with the trust records. Any new authorization can be challenged immediately. Also, the insurance company placed a fraud alert yesterday after someone attempted to change the beneficiary distribution by phone. Brianna whispered, Oh my God. I looked at her. That was you? She shook her head too quickly. I didn't change anything. I just asked questions. Rebecca said, Erin, I need you to listen carefully. I'm calling my investigator and the insurance fraud department. Do you have cameras inside the house? I looked at my mother. Then, at the small black camera Daniel had installed above the pantry after a package theft last year. Yes. Mother followed my gaze, her lips parted. Daniel set them to record when the garage door opens, I said. He was always worried about break-ins. Mother swallowed. Todd tried to recover. Recording without consent can be complicated. Rebecca's voice cut through the room. Not in her own kitchen, Mr. Miles, and if you are standing in her home with forged estate documents, I suggest you stop speaking until you have counsel. Todd shut his mouth. That was the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. Rebecca told me she was 20 minutes away and instructed me not to argue. When the call ended, nobody moved. Then Brianna began to cry. Not soft tears, not regret. Performance. Erin, please, she said, pressing both hands to her chest. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The boutique is all I have. Todd's investment group fell apart. Mom said you would help if we forced you to face reality. I looked at my mother. She didn't look sorry. She looked angry that the room was no longer obeying her. You planned this, I said. Mother's jaw tightened. I planned to save my daughter. I am your daughter. Her eyes flashed. Brianna has always needed more. There it was, the sentence that explained my entire childhood. Brianna needed dance lessons, so I wore thrift store shoes. Brianna needed a car, so I worked 2 jobs through college. Brianna needed a wedding, so my mother emptied the small savings account my grandmother had left me and called it family contribution. And Daniel, sweet Daniel, had seen it before I could say it out loud. I opened his letter with shaking hands and read the first paragraph silently. My Erin, if you are reading this because I'm gone, I am so sorry I can't sit beside you. But I know your mother. I know how she turns emergencies into invoices. I know how she makes you feel guilty for having anything she can give to Brianna. Promise me you will not pay for love you already deserved for free. A sound came out of me then. Not a sob. Something deeper. My mother looked uncomfortable. What are you reading? Something Daniel left me. Her face hardened. Of course he did. He always thought he knew better than us. He did. The words came out before I could soften them. He knew exactly who you were. The doorbell rang 23 minutes later. Rebecca arrived with a gray-haired man named Paul who introduced himself as a licensed private investigator, formerly with the State Insurance Fraud Unit. Behind them stood a uniformed Franklin police officer. My mother shot to her feet. You called the police on your own mother? No, Rebecca said, stepping into the kitchen. The insurance company did. Brianna started crying harder. Todd took 2 steps back. Officer Hayes asked who had entered the home using the garage code. No one answered. He asked who had produced the notarized authorization. My mother crossed her arms and said she wasn't answering questions without an attorney, which was the smartest thing she had said all morning. Paul reviewed the documents at the island. Then he opened his laptop and showed me the insurance fraud alert. Someone had called claiming to be me. The caller had my date of birth, Daniel's policy number, and my mother's address as a temporary mailing address. The voice recording was not mine, it was Brianna's. She had tried to imitate my voice badly, but grief makes people underestimate technology. My sister stopped crying. Rebecca turned the laptop toward her. Would you like to explain why you impersonated a beneficiary on a life insurance policy? Brianna looked at my mother. Mother looked away. That broke her more than anything. Mom told me what to say, Brianna whispered. My mother spun around. You ungrateful idiot. And just like that, the United Family front cracked open. Todd pointed at Brianna. I told you not to make the call from our house. Rebecca closed her eyes like she had just been handed a gift. Officer Hayes wrote that down. The next hour unfolded with a calmness that felt unreal. My kitchen became a place where every lie my family had carried in proudly was laid flat, labeled, and photographed. The forged document, the unauthorized copies from Daniel's office, the insurance call, the garage entry, the video of my mother taking folders from the desk the week before, the text message calling Daniel's memorial a gloomy little gathering. At one point, my mother tried to soften her face. Erin, she said, baby, this has gone too far. I looked at her. Don't call me baby. Her eyes watered. Real tears, maybe, or panic. I couldn't tell anymore. You can't destroy your sister over money. I didn't. You're doing it right now. No, I said. She tried to steal from my dead husband. You helped her. I just stopped making excuses. Brianna sat at my kitchen table with her mascara running down her cheeks, whispering that she would lose everything. The boutique, the lease, the condo, the social media page where she posted daily videos about elegance and abundance. I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered her champagne toast on the cruise ship while Daniel's friends carried his urn into the chapel. I remembered her calling me a selfish widow. I remembered her saying she had a life. Rebecca asked me if I wanted to pursue charges. Everyone looked at me. That was the moment they expected me to fold. My mother's eyes begged and commanded at the same time. Brianna shook her head like a child. Todd stared at the floor. The police officer waited. Rebecca stood beside me, quiet. I thought about what Daniel wrote. Promise me you will not pay for love you already deserved for free. Yes, I said. I want to pursue it. My mother made a sound like I had slapped her. Brianna stood and screamed my name, but Officer Hayes told her to sit down. Todd tried to leave, but Paul reminded him the documents in his folder were evidence. Rebecca placed one hand lightly on my shoulder, not to hold me up, just to remind me I was not alone. By Friday, the story had changed in my family's version. They told relatives I had lost my mind from grief. They said Daniel had poisoned me against them. They said Brianna only asked for a loan, and I had decided to ruin her because I was jealous she still had a husband. That lie lasted exactly 6 hours. Because Brianna, who had built her whole life on being seen, had forgotten something. She had posted everything: the cruise, the captions, the vow renewal. The video where my mother lifted a glass and said, "Here's to choosing joy over other people's drama." The comments where Brianna replied to someone asking about my husband's service with, "Some events are private for a reason." Rebecca advised me not to post anything, so I didn't. I simply stopped protecting them. Daniel's coworkers had seen the posts. So had neighbors. So had my cousins, who had sat beside me at the memorial while my own mother chose a cruise buffet. Someone screen recorded the video before Brianna deleted it. Someone sent it to her landlord. Someone sent it to the local women's business group where Brianna gave monthly talks about integrity and community. By Monday morning, her boutique's page was flooded with comments. By Tuesday, the landlord changed the locks for unpaid rent, not because of me, but because Brianna had been 3 months behind and had used the same forged incoming insurance fund's story to delay him. By Wednesday, Todd's so-called investment group posted a statement saying he was no longer affiliated with them. By Thursday, my mother called me 17 times. I did not answer. She came to my porch that evening, alone. I watched her through the camera. She looked smaller than she had in my kitchen. No linen outfit, no sunglasses, just an old cardigan and a face drained of performance. "Erin," she said into the camera, "open the door." I didn't move. She looked up at the lens. "I am still your mother." For the first time in my life, that sentence didn't work. She waited. Then she said, "I shouldn't have called it Gloomy." My hand tightened around Daniel's wedding ring. She still couldn't say memorial. She still couldn't say Daniel's name. She still couldn't say she was sorry. So I pressed the button and spoke through the doorbell. "You called my husband's memorial a gloomy little gathering. You broke into my house. You forged my name. You tried to steal the money he left to protect me. There is nothing left for you inside this house." She flinched. "Erin, please." "No, Mom. Brianna needed more, so now she can have more consequences." I ended the call. She stood there for a long time. Then she left. The charges did not become some dramatic television trial. Real life is slower than that. There were interviews, statements, court dates, continuances, attorney fees they could not afford, and humiliating paperwork they could not charm their way around. Brianna eventually pleaded guilty to attempted insurance fraud and identity theft. She avoided prison because it was her first offense, but she received probation, community service, restitution, and a record that made her elegant little brand impossible to rebuild. Todd was investigated for his role in preparing the documents. His real estate license was suspended pending review, and the men he used to impress with steakhouse dinners stopped returning his calls. My mother accepted a plea agreement for unlawful entry and conspiracy related to the forged authorization. She told the court she had acted out of maternal desperation, The judge asked her which daughter she had been desperate to protect. She had no answer. That was the part my cousin told me later. I wasn't in the courtroom that day. I was at the lake where Daniel and I used to walk on Sunday afternoons. I scattered a small portion of his ashes beneath the sycamore tree, where he had proposed with a ring box in one hand and a mosquito bite on his forehead. I sat there until sunset, wearing his hoodie, listening to the water move against the rocks. For weeks, I expected guilt to find me. It came, but it didn't stay. Grief stayed. Grief still visits. It comes when I hear a song Daniel loved in the grocery store. It comes when I open the freezer and find the last container of chili he made. It comes when I turn to tell him something funny and remember the room won't answer. But the guilt? That belonged to them, not to me. 6 months later, I changed the garage code, then changed the whole door. I donated Daniel's medical textbooks to a respiratory therapy student. I used part of the insurance money to start a scholarship in his name at the hospital where he worked. Every year, it helps one student who wants to care for children the way Daniel did. The first recipient was a young man named Mateo, whose mother cried when she met me. She said Daniel had once helped her daughter breathe through the worst night of their lives. That is what his money became. Not rent for Brianna's boutique. Not a rescue fund for Todd's bad decisions. Not another excuse for my mother to pretend favoritism was love. It became breath. It became help. It became Daniel. My family still tells people I abandoned them. Maybe I did. I abandoned the version of myself who answered every call, paid every emergency, swallowed every insult, and called it peace. I abandoned the little girl waiting for her mother to choose her. I abandoned the sister who believed love had to be earned through sacrifice. I abandoned the widow they thought they could corner in her own kitchen. And in that empty space, I found something I had mistaken for coldness at first. It was not coldness. It was freedom. So, family, if you are listening to this while carrying guilt that was handed to you by people who only remember you when they need something, let me say this clearly. You are allowed to lock the door. You are allowed to stop answering. You are allowed to protect what someone loving left behind for you. And when people call your grief inconvenient, when they call your boundaries selfish, when they treat your pain like an obstacle between them and your wallet, you do not owe them a performance of forgiveness. Sometimes soft revenge is not a courtroom, or a shouting match, or a final speech that makes everyone fall to their knees. Sometimes soft revenge is changing the code. Sometimes it is letting the phone ring. Sometimes it is using the money exactly the way love intended. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say to the people who treated your loss like a gloomy little gathering is nothing at all. The people who truly love us do not measure our pain against their convenience. They protect us when we are too tired to protect ourselves, just as Daniel did for Erin. In real life, choosing peace may feel lonely at first, but it can make room for honest love, quiet healing, and the kind of kindness that keeps breathing after loss.